Okay, so what I'm starting with is this black and white photo of myself, high contrast. I can change it so I can up the exposure, up the contrast, so I have some dark darks, some really white, light highlights, as well as some mid-tones in between, some grays in between. I've printed this off on thicker paper, so this is actually printed on drawing paper. And then I've also printed off one on printer paper as a reference for later, but I'm going to set the printer paper one aside. This is just so I can look at these tones later on. But I'll need this. I'll need a pair of scissors. And then what we're working towards is we're actually going to be isolating all of the tones into shapes. So we're going to be cutting them down almost like a puzzle that fits together. And then we're going to be looking at the tones in here and putting kind of associating certain colors back into this. It almost looks like at the end, it almost kind of looks like stained glass. And you can kind of think of that in that way. We're choosing these little sections of color to make up this portrait. So we're moving from this to this. And I also have this example, which is basically just, this is me drawing out some of these tones. It's kind of a value map. So I'm using, I'm trying to use just a pencil to draw around and isolate those, but we're going to actually do this with scissors. So I'm going to set this aside. I will need another piece of paper that is slightly larger than this. And then the first thing I'm going to do is actually cut out myself. So I'm going to cut out my head so that I have the outline, and it will only take a second. I do have, like, my head is kind of cut off on the side right here. So what I'm going to do is just kind of cut along that white line, and then I'll go here. And then again, I'm cutting along that line. But then when I get down here, I am gonna, yeah, I did cut out this chin just a little bit and kind of add it in. I do have a jacket on in this picture, but it's hard to see. And I think I'm gonna cut, there's my jacket line. Again, hard to see, but I'm gonna cut along that jacket line and then kind of have some hair that's sticking out on this side. So then I lay down my image onto this paper, and I'm gonna take a pencil and just do like a really quick trace. And what this does, the like quick trace, is it actually allows me to have kind of a, if we're thinking of this as a puzzle, as a tonal puzzle, like as a value puzzle, this is the outside of our puzzle. These are this is like the edges of the puzzle, and we need to go back, reference it sometimes. Okay, and then once I have that, I'm actually going to start cutting apart this actual piece. And remember, I have this one, so this is the cutting one. This one is just a reference for later. I'm gonna actually start from the bottom and cut out sections of my portrait depending on the value. So we're looking at shapes of value. So the first thing that I'm gonna cut out, and I'm gonna try and do this so that you guys can see it in the screen and on my phone, I'm gonna cut out this part of my jacket, because there's a nice clean line right there that goes up to my chin. And then what I'm gonna do is come back down right here, put my scissors down, and draw that line in. That's my jacket line. And then I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna cut out, I have this kind of mid-range shirt that's underneath the jacket, and I'm actually going to cut that out as well and think of that as one value, even though there's a couple different gray values in there. And each time I cut a piece of me, sounds like a song. Is it a song? I'm gonna come in and I draw that with my pencil. So here I'm gonna come and actually, do you see this whole section on my neck is kind of this, there's a lighter section right here, so I could cut out that kind of circle of that lighter gray, and then go in and set that aside, come back, draw that shape. This is my jacket line, it's barely visible, but I know that it's there. And I think I'm just gonna cut out that section of my jacket since I have that kind of, so I'm working from the bottom up. Isolating, that line goes down there. Isolating all of these little areas of color. This whole section of my neck is kind of a really similar, although this is a shaded area, so maybe I'll cut out that. And I think I'm gonna cut out from here to here. So if it'll look like this. These are like, this is my one value that I just cut out of my neck. And then I come back down, line it up with the outside again, draw that value back in. Now I can cut out that next layer. And I'm going to continue up my face exactly like this, where I just keep cutting out little sections. And it does get tricky when you get to the nose and the eyes, especially if you don't have like, if you have a lot of gray scale, like if you have a lot of gray ranges, the eyes and nose can get really tricky. But what you're trying to find is shapes, like you're kind of trying to create shapes out of each gray area or black or white area. My neck has a lot of shading in it, so I'm trying to honor that and create these shapes. I'm almost done with that bit. And then I think the last thing I'm going to show you guys before I show you kind of how it ends is that white section of my face and how much I could cut out of that. So let's, for the sake of time, cut my neck off. Only figuratively. No. I could also go back. I could also cut this neck out and see how there's a lot of tonal difference in there. I could actually just cut this into two pieces, trying to make some kind of jaggedy line, and come in and actually without the head on there, I could take my pencil and sketch those in really quick. So at least I have them. Tracing them just like I would trace a template puzzle piece. Here's my other section. And it doesn't have to be exact. We're gonna go back in with colors. It's really just giving you, so what we're doing is we're starting to build this tonal map. Okay, this is the fun part. I like this part. I'm gonna take my scissors and try and trace around this whole section of my face that's pretty bright white. So I'm starting over at my chin. I'm definitely going around the area of the like shadowed area underneath my lips, but then coming back into my lip because that's bright white right there. And over this way. You know what would make this really easy? Yeah. No, not good. But just know that you have that access in the room, because you could go through like all this nostril stuff that's happening. You could go through with an X-Acto knife and make that real nice and clean. My nose is very bright. And then I'm coming up into here. I'm going to go back and put that eye in. I'm not worrying about that right now. And I think I'm actually gonna go down and kind of cut that eyebrow out so I have a reference of where that eye is gonna land. Dink. Okay, so look at that. That's cool. That's a whole section of highlight, and I'm gonna put that down right here, make sure that it lines up in the right spot. That's why you have the outside, that's why you have your tracing from the very beginning. And then I'm gonna come in with my pencil, light pencil, and trace this whole section. And then I'm just gonna keep cutting from there. I cut like, you know, the nostrils are gonna be dark black, so you'll wanna cut those out. And you're looking for any variation of tone that you can cut out, and if you have an X-Acto knife, that might make it easier. But you can already see this is going to come into, start to kind of fill in my face with all those things. Here's my cool, that's cool in itself. It is kind of cool. My hair is really dark, so what I did was I actually kind of more, I used my creative liberty and played around with some of these shapes in my hair. I know I have highlights up here, and there are some highlights in here, but because I bumped the contrast so much, I don't see them very much. There's also a jacket that's kind of right here. So when I did it the other day, this is where we're kind of moving to. So you can kind of see both of them. There's that line. Same thing here, although I cut out a little bit further on this one. But this is what you'll end up with. After you've cut out your whole piece, you've trimmed apart all your eyes, and you've traced it all down, and you can see I used a lot of creative liberty in my hair to kind of like give those shapes, because hair is fun to paint and draw, so because it's so organic. And then what you can do, this is the fun part that I really am excited to like show you guys, is you can pull out your colored pencils and think of a color scheme. I think I'm gonna go with kind of a turquoise, seafoamy green. I might use a couple different colors of greens. And I'm gonna set them down here, and I'm gonna be thinking of some of the lightest shades and some of my darker shades, because I definitely am going to be moving down into like a black tone, which on this paper I could use like a Sharpie for, which would be pretty cool and make it really strong. It would also kind of make it look a little bit more like a Warhol tonal dropout piece. But I definitely want some mid-range tones, and I don't have all the colored pencils in the world to like create that full range, but I do have a few. And so I'm gonna start with those ones, I think. And obviously I have white in here, so I'm going to leave some of that white. I'm gonna bring this back in. And I'm gonna start looking for that second gray tone, which is a lot of this and this. I can also look for some of these, like my eyebrows are not totally black. I would say they're like a step or two up from this dark area of my hair. So I could come in and choose that anything that's kind of around this range is going to be this turquoise color. And then I can go in and actually shade in anything that's in that range with this turquoise. So it kind of actually blends. There's a little bit of a different color underneath my eye here. I would say my lip on this side could almost get a little bit of that turquoise. Definitely inside the lip, which might be even a little bit darker. Above this nostril, there's a shadow. Below the nostril, that whole section around my nose is about that color, not color, but tone range. Kind of in between my eye right there. And right here. Maybe over on the other side of my eye. Maybe all through that, I'll add that. Then I can go to another range, so I could move up a range. So let's say I'm stepping up to this kind of color that's below my eyebrow, and I can move in with something like that and start playing around with where those shading areas are going. And I can blend. That's the other thing too with colored pencils. You can always go back in and play around and blend. I'm not necessarily, you don't have to keep that isolation. If you really want to blend, you can play around with blending or making areas lighter or darker, like underneath my nose. That nostril area needs to be a little bit darker. And so you can see this can be really fun to kind of like pick out colors that replace these gray scales. And then eventually I'll fill this in and have a value map, but the value map is going to be in color and totally based off of this. Yes?
So for the final painting product, it can be blended, it doesn't have to be like this?
Yes, it totally can be blended. This specifically is just like an exercise to help your painting be even that much better. Because it's basically it's an exercise, but I also want this to be a piece of art. It can be, like, this could be an awesome piece of artwork. But I want you to try and do this, and that idea of cutting out and isolating all these values will help you transfer. Because then, like we were saying, if you cut this down to an 8x10, you can transfer it onto your canvas, which is a 16x20, and you already have, so if I gridded out this page, then I have all these lines in place for me to create a really nice portrait. And you don't necessarily have to use all these lines, but this is a great way to like start out as the like bare bones of your portrait, and then going in and filling in, and you can blend if you want to blend your tones. We are going to be monochromatic, so you'll be, like if I choose turquoise, I probably won't have a green like this. I could play around with adding on a little bit of something else if I want to play around with that, but I'd like you to try and do it monochromatic. So this is what I'm going to work on today, is just coloring in this. And then the next step for you guys will be to take your black and white photo, and that's something I would like you guys to either do, we can do in class with the lighting, or you can take a photo of yourself this weekend and bring it in, or you can have a friend or a family take a photo of yourself, or if you were contemplating not doing a self-portrait but doing it of somebody else, then we can have this ready to roll on Monday and start working on these paintings on Tuesday, or the drawings on Tuesday.